Hello and welcome back to our Visual Supercharge online course. Good morning, evening, David.
Good morning, evening, Bart. I was thinking about this last night, and it occurred to me that we might have saved the best for last because it struck me that in the title, it's like independent yet collective.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you can do your own thing, and it creates this much bigger group thing,
Mm-hmm.
but there isn't the immediate time pressure to perform. So you can be more relaxed. You can experiment. You can erase your mistakes. You can stretch a little, and you can be really thoughtful about what other people are saying. And you're not sort of pushed into an immediate automatic response.
Yeah.
Those
You're not on the spot, right?
Right, exactly. And those are gifts that this modality offers.
Let's explain the situation better because it might not be super clear for our audience what we're speaking here about. It's all about participating to the board at different times.
Yeah, people's schedules are fragmented. They can't always be together.
We can all relate to that.
And when we first were setting this episode up, just to warm ourselves up and get into the spirit of playing and interaction, we did this little, doodling with these various IC squared, right?
All these here, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, independent, collective, idea, contribution, that's too many words. So IC squared is a playful, quick way to say, look at all the possibilities that can happen when you're not squeezed into a box.
Yeah. And by those different styles that you see here on screen of these IC square symbols, we try to express the freedom of expression because in all honesty, everyone is different. Everyone wants to express themselves in a different way. What is beautiful about these tools is that they allow for that.
Yep. As I'm demonstrating here with the word freedom.
Oh, yes.
And that's what we want to encourage is people to be thinking out of the box and to be more authentic and more responsive to all the possibilities.
Yeah.
So, and we've got some wonderful guidelines as to how to maximize this entire attribute that is possible with the unlimited digital canvas and all the technology plus our own innate ability offers.
Let's go for that. And let's start by appreciating what this technology offers in this world full of meeting rooms that open when the time of meeting comes and closes at the end of the meeting. This space stays open. We call this persistent area or stage, as you would want to call this. It persists and it's always inviting. It's always open for access, no matter the time you want to do that, no matter the time you want to contribute to it. So it's a kind of like a different idea, right, of meeting out of time.
Well, let's show everybody the whole canvas and all the things that are in here, because the first two things that came up for me when you were talking about a kind of a different kind of meeting room is the fact that we have all of these tools that are available to us, and we're in a dance with other people. It might be 3 or 4 or 7 people, or it might be 30 people, right? And those two properties of being in a dance with all kinds of tools, like out of time, and it's not completely out of time either. There is some structure to it, or there needs to be, right?
Yeah.
It's just that the possibilities are way magnified. And part of that inspiration is being in the environment that digital invites, encourages, and supports. And it's a creative environment. It's a collaborative environment. It's an environment where so much is possible. So let's you've got some really interesting pictures here. Let's start there, and then we'll frame our principles, our guidelines as we go. But yeah, there we go.
These pictures show physical spaces, right? Spaces of inspiration, spaces where a lot of items are left or nested in there for different purposes. Digital canvas can be similarly space to nest ideas with, of course, digital assets, right? Without any specific structure or without any specific order, as you like, at first, at least, right? This order and the structure can be developed later, but at the very beginning, it is a space to create shared intentionality.
Yeah, that shared context of intentionality and possibility is a great place to start. At any point, you want to be congealing and aligning around what your purpose is in the moment. And then each purpose will enable or reveal a goal appropriate to that purpose. So at first, if you're just starting, you want people to be comfortable with the skills. You want them to know how the tools operate. And I think your analogy of I call it a studio environment, is a great way to say, what does this mean to you? And what would you put into your own studio? I mean, you could even structure that as an initial sort of get to know you kind of an assignment, where if you just had a room to fill with things that were meaningful experiences, objects that would motivate you and inspire you, tools, how would you structure your creative space? And then how would you structure it to be a creative, collaborative space?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And from that kind of unstructured place, you learn how to develop the tools and, sort of the rules of engagement with people.
It's the same thing as this old saying, show me your bookshelf and I'll tell you who you are, right? so the exercise here would be, okay, if you want to...
That's a great line.
If you want to, thank you. If you want
You're like the only person I know who would say that.
Maybe it's not so common these days, but if you want to get your team members better, ask them to bring to the space things that inspire them, that they like, that they are passionate about. And by having those pictures in one space, you can then have a conversation and really get to know them better.
Yeah, and I think that comfort level, that safety, if you will, and that security that comes through a little bit of practice, trying the tools, making some mistakes, experiencing a little frustration, and pulling or breaking through that is really important to this whole process, because later on down the road, if you want to start building a spreadsheet together,
yeah.
you're gonna need to have that sense of security and safety and trust really laid in as your foundation.
True. And spreadsheet comes with a structure, right? Here,
yes.
This is not rigid. It can be any order that you like.
Well, can I just elaborate on that for just one more moment?
Oh, sure.
Sometimes an all blank canvas can be very intimidating. So even early on, it's important to have like a couple of parameters, right? So that people feel more secure with what they can safely, comfortably bring and add and contribute to that canvas. And as we'll be sharing with people later, maybe in our concluding segment, we have some add-on services to help people dive in and really maximize all these tools. And we'll be available to help people work with that idea of how do you add structure appropriately to the job, to the task, to the goal.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's a big and very, very practical question, which we'll be available to help people with.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You don't want to fly off the canvas.
But
maybe you do want to fly off the canvas. I'm not sure.
Blank canvas creates a lot of opportunities, but it's sometimes difficult to start with just empty space, not knowing what you're allowed for within the group that you work with, right? And it's something to discover using such exercise that we suggested here. It's the nature of this tool that everything you represent by hand is imperfect, obviously. Everyone will have different style, different skill, but this imperfection of the things that we create or add to the canvas is actually an invitation to contribute and more, to open yourself for accepting those imperfections. And by this canvas becomes more inclusive. Would you agree?
Well, yeah, and that's a perfect segue to this other section that we have here, which is these guidelines or principles.
Right.
Because, and we've talked a lot now about establishing that shared context or reason for contributing. We've talked about making sure that all the systems are go and that people feel comfortable. They have some minimal skills. They know how the tools operate, like that. And then there's this third principle, which is that when you contribute something to the canvas, you want people to understand how that fits in and why you're doing that. So it's really important that people grasp that we're not saying this is purely a visual experience. We all need words. Words and pictures go together. So provide some explanation. Make us a title or a subtitle. Give us a few words of explanation as to the why or the how you selected this and what its meaning is. Not a whole paragraph, just a few key words that focus us in and help us understand why this visual matches this concept, or as you said, this intention.
Yeah.
You know, as problems have grown to be increasingly more complex, we need to deal with layers of things and relationships of things and constant change and moving into the foreground at detail and moving back out of the picture as big picture understanding. And so often when we're describing something very concrete, you know, a tool or a placement or a position or something, it's a lot easier to get our ideas out there because what we're describing is something that you can physically see, right?
Yeah.
But that's not always the case. Sometimes we're dealing with something that is far more fluid and abstract. So that's why we need to be able to shift in and out of just the right words, just the right pictures to help our collaborators, our readers, our viewers, right? The people we're communicating with understand more precisely when we need them to what we're talking about. So the interchangeability there is what we're all about.
Yeah, that's a very important point. So moving to the principle number 4, because I think this is very important, to withhold judgment.
Can I get an amen?
Well, certainly, but please first, if you could introduce this thought to us.
What we mean by judgment here is criticism, is an expression of that's not acceptable, that's wrong, that's bad, and that weakens people's confidence, right? Or that sidelines them, that minimizes their contribution. And it's so easy. Sometimes I think that judgment is the number one form of currency we all use in the world because we tend to judge ourselves as well as other people, and we're very automatic, right? We're constantly making comparisons. Look at me wagging my pen here.
Honestly. No, please. You're right. Yeah.
But it's so automatic with people to say, oh, no. That's not right. Immediately, without asking, well, why did you contribute that? Okay, give us a larger picture of what does that look like to you? And it's that new habit of refraining from immediate judgment, because that kind of criticism or scorn or whatever you want to call it shuts people down. It kills it kills that fluidity and that receptivity, and it kills all those possibilities.
It blocks.
It kills collaboration.
Yes, it blocks contribution altogether. Yeah.
Right. It just blasts what we're talking about right out of the water. So
but
it's really an important rule.
It is, and I see it universal. It does not apply only to this situation of IC square. It does not help visual expression. It is universal. Would you agree?
It is in every level and layer and pocket of society.
Yeah.
All you have to do is turn on any television show and you'll see it.
Yeah. And the last one is still quite important because we're speaking here about unrigid, very fluid tools and techniques, but everything has its limits. So by opening the board and allowing contribution, you must not necessarily assume that the contribution will happen. You must necessarily assume that it will happen at the time when you need it. And therefore, setting the process, explaining the steps, creating the time frames is still quite important, isn't it?
Absolutely. Expectations, that kind of a structure, as long as everyone understands clearly what the expectations are, they're going to help deliver the results we want. Right? If the sort of the rule of engagement is, okay, everybody needs to make a contribution of some kind by tomorrow at 10 o'clock, then if that doesn't happen, you can at least try to problem solve as to, well, why didn't it?
Yeah. But I guess it's a principle behind this reverse brainstorm rule, right? That you contribute with ideas, with your best ideas will come to you, not at a meeting, but when you're taking a shower, right? Or just walking your dog. So it's important to allow for that within given time frames, and the magic will happen.
Yes, and as we'll show later, once you establish the pattern, which visuals help us do in such a huge way, the pattern will fill in.
Oh, the pattern. Yes, let's go for that. But before we do, let's briefly discuss visual representation as a topic. So that's third quadrant here of the things that we prepared for today. Where we want to cover this topic of representation and organization of content, right? And we have this funny exercise here in this corner where you see, what do you see here, David?
I see a lot of black cylinders.
Cylinders, you say, because they look
cylindrical looking objects.
Okay, you already know what I'm getting at here. Yes, these are very similar objects. And we put them here to make a point that you can organize contents by, let's say, visually forming a group of the contents of the canvas. So, for example, here we might have people contributing with similar ideas or similar elements that you want to choose from and differentiate at some point of time, right?
Yep. So, and there's countless ways to organize things and visuals. I mean, we're doing it with a grouping here, right? You could do it with a grid. You can do it with colors. You can do it with sizes. So this is where it's really fun to experiment and try new things. And that becomes part of the group process as well, to say what makes the most sense in terms of our own thinking and shared context. How do we want to organize our information, given we can do whatever we want with space, right? Mm-hmm. So proximity makes a difference. Size matters.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And when you make something big, as I'm going to right here, right? What happens is that our automatic visualization, pattern recognition, comparison mechanism, it kicks in. It's automatic.
It's triggered, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so we start not just looking at the overall shape, or color, we start to notice details.
Oh, what are these? Huh?
Yeah.
A very peculiar trash can. Would you agree?
Well, right. If you're watching what you're circling there, you got to say to yourself, whoa, 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 whoa. That's not like every other object.
Yeah. And by this observation, now we see it's a computer, but by this observation, we can actually start to sort things out and organize our canvas to differentiate between similarly looking yet very different objects, right?
Yes. And, just to maximize that effect, when we do this, all of a sudden, those details become way more important than they were when you were just, looking at them small, right?
Yeah.
And that again is the power of this digital canvas.
True.
We can shift the focus in an instant and thereby direct people to a particular nuance or attribute of any subject. And it doesn't have to take a long time. Because we're all on that same page.
Yeah. So that's one thing, shifting focus. But the other is organizing content. These elements form group together, right? Which is a different group than, let's say, objects here. They are separated by space. So visually, our perception shows us that these are not the same objects. They are different because they are divided by this space in between. And there's this entire subject of the perception and the laws of perception. We call them Gestalt principles. This one is actually a good demonstration of the proximity principle. We don't want to be very technical, but it's good to know that it's well described in the literature of perception.
Oh, come on. You love getting technical.
I love German-sounding words. All right. So this is one of the ways you can organize your content. The pattern recognition is actually something we want to show you here, because if you look, I just zoomed out to show you the entire canvas. And what do you see here? Is there any pattern that you are able to observe here, David, by looking on the contents of this canvas?
Yeah, my answer to that would be
yes, exactly. So what you see here on the canvas is kind of like a square. It's 2 by 2, right? And it's missing.
I accidentally revealed something.
Wow,
I'm sorry.
Bring it back. Bring it back. What we want to show.
I didn't realize you had something hiding there, Bart.
I have something hiding here, and it's actually a fourth quadrant here, a fourth space that now it's revealed, but without it, it was an invitation to contribute. At least it meant to be an invitation to contribute, which utilizes another beautiful thing related to our perception, pattern-making ability.
You bet. And I always want to point out to people that this capacity that we have innately for pattern recognition, this has been in development since we were like 2 days old. And we opened our eyes and we started observing the faces of the people who were caretaking us. So we started to recognize the pattern in facial expression and body language and light and dark and movement since we were, early infants. That is how long we've been studying patterns in life.
That's true. That is something we can use with those visual tools to invite contribution by leaving an empty space within a certain shape, right? Just to show that something's missing here.
Yes, something is expected.
Something is expected, which uses, again, another principle of human perception. And in Gestalt language, it's called the principle of continuation, that we see things as complete when they're not. Like this shape here. We want them to be completed, and that's why it's an invitation for us to contribute.
Right. And so if all of a sudden there's a couple missing things there, my pattern recognition mechanism says something's not right there, right?
I think it's a very novel way of inviting a contribution, but it's a very fun way. Find the pattern, add what is missing. Instead of telling people explicitly what is there to be brought to the canvas, because you might not even know. You just leave empty space for the contribution to happen. And if you invite this contribution, if you follow the principles that we mentioned and listed here, this contribution may be very natural for your team members and very, how to say this, fun, inspiring.
Well, moving forward is fun, right? And when you can move forward quickly without obstruction and without constraints and accomplish things, to me, that is the definition of fun in business, right? And it even, my acronym, forward moving, unlimited, and natural or easy is fun.
True.
Yeah. And I'm still learning how to think visually as a habit in the moment, because we all tend to love to talk. Mm-hmm. And I was in a conversation yesterday with a friend of mine, and I was like, here, let's take out the pad. And when you're describing your story, she was telling me about a family gathering. I said, let me, or you create the family tree so that I can see all the people you're talking about and where they fit in. And it was so much more memorable when we did that.
It's a great visual tool for that, right? So I guess the final recommendation would be find your visual structure, visual tool that is applicable for the job that you're doing.
Try and share.
Great.
Thanks, Bart. I think we've done it here in covering the basics of this modality.
We tried our best, and I hope it was insightful and inspiring for our audience. Thank you, David, again.
Take care.